I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning around. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It's January 10th, 2014, Friday edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. Tonight I'm going to be getting into a few topics, including just the ongoing uptick in veteran suicides, which is a matter that hits close to home. You know, Veterans Affairs hits close to home to me, and I've lost friends to this. And most veterans know somebody that they've lost to this, or combat, but actually we've lost more people to suicide than combat. Anyway, we're going to be getting into that. The economy, the war on drugs, a new TSA video for kids, which is not from the TSA. It's I guess you could say like a parody video, but I think you guys will like it, and a few other things, hopefully, if we have enough time. Anyway, joining me for 2 hours tonight to go over all this stuff is my good buddy, fellow radio show host and troublemaker, Joe Joseph.
Yes, that's why I did a rebroad tonight, folks, is because I wanted to concentrate and give all my energy to Popeye. So here I am.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, hey, no sweat, man, no sweat. It's great to be here.
It's been a minute since we actually got a chance to do something. We hang out on Hangar 18, and we get kind of rowdy and stuff. But I like doing, I enjoy doing the serious broadcast with you too, because you and I have this flow about us. When we get on air and we cover these things, and we end up getting more information out, and people seem to be more receptive to it. So, and I know these things are actually they hit home for you too. I mean, you agree with me about the insane war on drugs. It's just
good grief.
Stupid, right? Unwinnable?
Yeah, absolutely. It's on every level. It's stupid, but you'll never see the federal government willingly go and legalize marijuana or drugs in general.
You don't think so?
Nah. No, I mean, you're going to have a wave of states legalize marijuana before they relent on that, and even then they're going to go kicking and screaming. I mean,
I don't see them going out like okay, come on, we'll just do it.
Matter of fact, there's now articles surfacing about this worry that these legalized and sanctioned pot stores in Colorado could be the subject of retaliation from the cartels.
Yeah, which, by the way, I think that's just fear-mongering.
Total bunk. Total and complete bunk.
That's fear-mongering. They're trying
to...
because...
Do you think the cartels care about pot, really?
No, that's not really where they make their everybody's like, they make the bulk of their money in marijuana. Wrong.
No.
Wrong. No. Try cocaine and opium.
Yeah. The big boys.
Or even if it's been refined into heroin.
Or crocodile.
Ugh.
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 I'm sorry, man. When I saw that video with the guys like femur exposed. And everything like
they're
that,
not doing that on
melted.
purpose. What that is a lot of people, that was like misinformation. They were like, of course, the mainstream media here, right? New drug on the market. It's not that it's a new drug. It's that people are buying heroin. They think they're buying heroin. In a lot of cases, people think they're buying heroin, and they're getting this mixture of garbage, and in it goes. I mean, all it takes is a couple huge batches of this stuff going out there and getting out to the, people don't realize how global the drug trade is.
Yeah. It's not only that, but I mean, the nice thing about these marijuana shops, I was talking to a coworker today about this because, he's against or was against marijuana being legalized. And I said, so you're for prohibition then? And he says, well, no, of course not. I said, but here's the thing. I said, just in the last 3 or 4 months or so, he's gone out, didn't have a gun. Now he's got a gun for his wife, gun for himself. And so I said, you're into guns now. You believe in gun rights and the right to protect yourself and the fact that the more guns you have out there, the lower the crime, right? Yeah. Well, then you're a hypocrite. Well, why is that? Well, because with marijuana, the same argument holds true that the more marijuana you put out there legally for people to purchase, not only do they know what they're getting, they'll be a lot happier, it'll be a lot safer, but you'll also have crime go down as a result of it because they're not going to be partaking in any illegal transactions or doing anything like that. They'll know what they're getting instead of whatever's in the street swag, and everybody will be better off. And that's because there's no prohibition. So you want to prohibit people on the one hand, but only when it's good for you is prohibition not good. It's only when you want to tell other people on how to live their lives that prohibition kicks ass. It was like, wow, I never really thought of it that way. Well, that's the way it is. You're in for a penny, in for a pound.
Prohibition just has not worked.
Nope, never once.
It hasn't.
Free will's a bitch.
Oh, dude, the problem is you telling somebody not to do something. This is one of the major problems, and they know this. It's like telling a kid, don't take those cookies, and then walking out in the kitchen.
Yeah.
What do you think the first thing that kid's going to do? He turns around and looks at the cookie jar and goes, why don't they want me touching those cookies? They must taste good. What do you think Dare did? That was a joke. Let me tell you what. I was a kid. I didn't know what crack or cocaine was until the Dare officer came to school.
I know.
And then they're like, this is crack. And half the school's taking notes. They're drawing pictures. Okay, crack.
Yeah, crack rocks. Meanwhile,
right.
You do that today, what's going to happen? You get thrown out, out of school, put in prison.
Well, it's just amazing, dude. People have no idea. I mean, a lot of this stuff does quite the opposite of what they say it's going to do.
Yeah.
Again, most of these kids didn't know anything about drugs or anything like that. Do you think kids would know about fisting or anything like that? And I use this as an example because people are going to go, wow, you're going
That's such a fantastic example.
Well,
I'm so glad you're going there.
But they're going to say, wow, that's far out, right? Why would you even bring fisting up? Because the New York It's either New York City or New York State. I know at least the city's doing it. That they want the kids to learn about that in sex ed. They want them to learn about fisting and all this other stuff. Now, I can understand having sex ed because there's a certain time period, I guess, that you should have that conversation in health class because, when I was a kid, they did it by senior year, and it was a wee bit too late because by the time we were, junior year, half the girls, well, not half, but okay, a good portion of the girls in my class were pregnant. Mm-hmm. So they perhaps might have done it maybe when they were freshmen coming into high school. That's about the time maybe they should have done it the freshman year. But they waited till senior year to have the sex ed part of health class. Well, I don't know what they're thinking it was, but whatever. The point is, I'm not trying to push sex on children. I agree that the sex ed health class should be had about reproduction and parents should talk to their kids by a certain age. But not teaching it to, I don't think you should be teaching it to middle school kids. If kids that young are becoming sexually active, I think it should be a case-by-case basis. And honestly, that's up to the parents. I don't really think a teacher should be teaching a kid about their sexuality. And in a lot of these cases, they're just the weird stuff that they're showing kids. I've seen in one case they hired a porn star to do a sex ed class. Like, are you kidding me, dude?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, look at what they do in college too. I mean, they got pole dancing and everything. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, it's just amazing how they sexualize everything. I mean, and they do the same thing. It's with drugs, anything. They expose the kids to this stuff, and then they wonder why the kids are promiscuous. And I don't understand why teenage girls the pregnancy rate amongst teenage girls is so high. Really?
How about you let mom and dad handle that stuff?
Well, just really? You don't understand why pregnancy rate is so high? How about the fact that you have a quote-unquote reality TV show called 16 and Pregnant?
Exactly. But why don't you just let mom and dad handle that stuff? That's best left to the parents.
Well, the other problem is you have parents that suck as parents, and I get it. Sometimes they don't have support structure and they don't know what to do, which is fair, but they need to be taught. You need to soldier up. You got a little human that you have to take care of now. You need to stop thinking about yourself. Like, if you're going to have kids, you need to not be a selfish individual. If you're a selfish individual, don't have children. Because you're not going to, obviously, you're not really going to think about the kid, and that ain't right. Like if you're going to have don't have kids just because you want to say I'm a mother or I'm a father. Like, that doesn't make you a mom or a dad, just because you've sired children. Based on my life experience, I was a real selfish bastard, and then and then the kids came along, and that really kind of changed things a little bit. And as far as your aspect of things, but and I would have to say, for the most part, at least from the people that I know and that do have kids, you almost have to go that way, Not that you don't have your moments. Don't get me wrong, but you have to put your kids first. That's what it's all about. So, with that said, you want to try and guide them as best you can, And I'll tell you what, I would be absolutely outraged if my son or daughter had to go through a class that talked about that kind of garbage. Seriously. Dude, I'm telling you, like, the stuff, like, I thought we had it rough in school, and we did to a certain extent, but, like, the stuff that goes on now, first of all, it's ridiculous. I know that they changed the way that they teach kids, but holy crap, I mean, the whole educational system, it's nothing aside from the testing and how they tell you you're a loser or, you're going to be a garbage man or whatever. That's remained the same. But, and actually, they actually used to give us real tests when I was a kid still. I remember when they were switching over to that standardized testing to see if you were going to be a garbage man or not when I was a senior in high school. And all the younger classes had to go through that. But, nothing is like it used to be at all. I mean, remember woodshop? Yeah, of course, dude. I had a... Remember auto shop and metal shop? Funny you should mention that because in like a year span, I remember it was 8th grade and we were making signs, in wood shop, and I was using the upright router. And here we go, going around, doing the side of this sign we were making. And the damn board flips up and boom, in goes my pinky, right? And it's like, doggone it. I was wearing white pants that day. And they were polka dot when it was done. It was like, that kind of stuff happened, dude. Oh, yeah. And then the next year, the woodshop teacher cut all his fingers off with the table saw. There was always one teacher, usually the woodshop teacher, was missing a finger. Always, at least one. And we had metal shop, which was awesome. We made crowbars. We had auto shop. Yep, all that stuff. You were allowed to actually, not only were you allowed, but you were taught how to do this stuff. Why do you think guys, most men and girls, there were sometimes girls in auto shop too, knew how to change tires? Sure. Not anymore. I mean, these are all valuable skills that you kind of need for just life in general, just like home ec and everything else, even though I failed sewing twice. The 2 times that I was required to take it, I took home ec. I had some friends that were like, why are you taking home ec? Because it was me and one other dude in a room full of all the hot girls in school. Why do you think I took home ec, morons? And I already knew how to cook because my mother taught me how to cook, so I aced the class. I could cook any of the things that they wanted us to cook in home ec because I had been taught from the time I was a little kid by my mother, who made everything, from scratch. She was old school European like that. So it was an easy grade, and I got to hang out with all the hotties in school. Yeah, no brainer. Duh. You know what I mean? It was easy. And then it got a little weird because then they started introducing, because we had so many girls getting pregnant, they started introducing parenting classes.
Oh, excellent. That's even better.
Oh, yeah. And this is in the 90s. So
we
it
never did that.
We weren't, like, you can remember the 90s. We weren't as exposed to as much sexuality as the kids are even today. You wonder why there's so many 16-year-old girls
on the
pregnant.
TV and all that kind of stuff? No, it wasn't.
Yeah, in the media. I mean, kids saw porn and stuff like that, and kids were having sex,
but I mean, it still wasn't as prevalent on network television.
Dude, first of all, kids weren't even as sexually active as they are now. I mean, parents, I hate to break it to you, but if you have a teenager, you should ask them about rainbow parties and stuff like that.
Oh, God.
Dude, they get together, they have parties where all these teenage girls go around giving different guys blowjobs. I'm going to be graphic here. That's what they do. That's what I think they call it a rainbow party, is what, if I remember correctly. I was astonished. I mean, I thought we were like the partying, like, off the hook generation. You know, we were the late 80s, 90s kids that they were doing coke and everything else and drinking all the time. Okay, I thought that was hardcore partying. These kids make us look like Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm.
That's a good way of putting it.
Dude, I was like, what? And part of that is, well, a major portion of that is the media. And you know, I give you credit. You have younger daughters. And I know your kids are homeschooled, so you're not really going to have a problem with this. But, I mean, as a father to a daughter, like, wouldn't you be pissed off if you found out your daughter was taking part in one of these parties? I mean, you don't want your daughter...
Yeah.
Right? Like, I wouldn't want my daughter to be a little hoe. Look, I know she's going to grow up and have sex, but there's a difference between her having sex with a guy for whatever reason, you know, like maybe she cares about him and they want to have sex with each other, or her just being a little hoe and not caring about herself and, you know, being taught that if whatever she wants, use her vag basically to get it. I'm being blunt. You know, if we sugarcoat it, people are going to be like, "Oh, you know, I'm going to miss the point." That's what's going to happen. They're going to miss the point. They're not going to get it. If I hit them in the face and right in the freaking jaw with it, I got to be blunt, or they're going to. They're probably still going to whine.
You know what I think this is? You know what I think all this is this is your inner self crying out that you really want to have kids, and I'm all for it, Popeye, and that's why I'm willing to do this for you. I am willing to send you at least 2 of mine.
Do not know. Your children, negative.
I'm telling you, man, and you know, I'll even throw in the shipping. No?
You can keep them.
Son of a...
Uncle Popeye will send him mountains of candy, though. Kids, here's 5 pounds of sugar. I want you to start eating this at 7:30 on a Saturday morning.
Battery-operated toys that make a lot of noise. Yeah, that's good.
The symbols and stuff, right?
Yeah, that's always good.
Yeah. The wind-up ones, too. I'll make sure that way they don't run out of batteries ever. They can just keep winding them up, and they can make all the noises. To parents that have kids and stuff, like, I give you guys credit for raising them, but, like, being a kid today, too, itself, rough.
Just a lot of... There's so much more, what do you call it, distraction, input.
Well, kids are just... The net... Dude, we didn't have... We were mean to each other as kids.
We had BBSs.
But we had like a bulletin board system, but no one even used that crap. We were mean and horrific to each other when we were kids. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine what it's like now with Twitter and Facebook? And
YouTube it's ruthless.
And like smartphone technology and stuff. I mean, kids are always like little turds to each other.
Yeah.
You know, children. I don't think
school was such drama. I mean, think about that now.
Grown-ups don't. You know, if you look back and you think about it, a lot of grown-ups kind of like. I guess they put it away because maybe they had a crappy childhood. But like childhood, like the drama kids deal with in school is kind of like a little version of society. Mm-hmm. It's like a miniaturized version of society. You know, you have all these different groups. Ugh, I would not want to go through. I hated school. You know what? I didn't even hate school because of the kids I went to school with. I didn't really mind. I mean, I got in fights and stuff, but whatever. That was really no biggie. I couldn't stand school because, at least when I was a kid, it felt like a prison back then. I can only imagine what it's like now. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if it's like this in North Carolina, but I even said this to Charlotte Isby. When you drive past the school, at least down here in Florida, they have banners on like almost every square inch of fence, advertising all sorts of different stuff. I mean, it's just disgusting, dude.
Really?
Yeah, they have corporate advertising all over the school. When you drive past the school, and I'm not talking like a private school.
You're not talking like on the ball field or anything, are you?
No, I'm talking about the fence surrounding the outside perimeter of the school. So, like, you drive past the parking lot.
Oh, wow. Hey.
Yeah, so
what that's all about.
Because they sell out to the advertisers for money. How do you think they get money to do certain things at the schools now?
Oh, yeah. No, I know.
Charlotte's talked about this when she's come on with me. But, I mean, like, they didn't have that when we were kids. First of all, you were lucky if there was a fence up around the school. I mean, right?
They didn't have a fence around the school.
No. But now, most of these schools have fences, some of them with barbed wire. Like, wow, holy North Korean prison camp.
And then the morons built my high school next to one of the most cherished parks in my hometown. The name of it was Blunt Park. Blunt Park. You can imagine what was happening over at Blunt Park.
A lot of smoking.
It's like, you idiots. At least rename the park. You know what you're encouraging there? You're encouraging truancy. And those kids are smoking those marijuana cigarettes.
You remember the truant officer?
Oh, yeah.
Ugh. I remember having to go to, what was that office, whatever it was, to go get the pass. I forget what they called it at my high school, but it was like next to if you were late, you walked into the main office and you had to go to the left, and it was this little office on the side where I think it was the attendance office or whatever. And if you were late, it didn't matter. You got detention for being late. Like, it
didn't have any of that.
Oh, dude.
See, and then
I actually, you automatically got detention for being late. Unless you had a note, it was like this automatic punishment. There ended up being like 1 year where I had like 6 months of the school year. They wanted me to go to detention. I racked up like 6 months of detention somewhere around there because I just never went. And they're like, we're going to keep adding the days. And I'm like, yeah, good luck with that.
Or unless you sacrifice your last study period of the day, and you go down to the school office and volunteer there for 6th period.
We didn't have that.
And take your name off of the callback system that calls your house.
Oh, well.
You missed stuff.
Ah, you see, that's smart.
All the secretaries, and then whenever you come in late, it's okay, don't worry about it.
See, I tried that. They did not like me. They had it out for me from the get-go. Half the school secretaries in my high school were like 900 years old. Okay,
so were mine.
But they weren't nice. They were like the opposite of nice.
Oh, you just got to befriend them.
No, there was no.
You find what resonates with them.
Nope, I befriended the vice principal, and then the first one retired.
Oh, I didn't like them at all.
The first vice principal retired after the first year. So then the next one that came in was a total douche. Then the other two just left me alone. But the second one, him and I had it out. That was epic. I have some epic stories from that guy. I could tell you, man. Whew. Anyway, the principal himself, he knew my older brother. He knew my mom from when she used to work for the town and stuff, and when my brother went to high school. So he knew, like, him and I had this rapport, and by the time I graduated, like, he shook my hand. It was his final year, and he shook my hand. He actually said to me when he handed me my diploma, "Congratulations, you beat the system."
Yeah.
Because he knew they were trying to leave me behind and everything else. They were trying everything in their power. I had my guidance counselor tell me to drop out.
Wow.
Because I told him, you know why? He said to me, we did these stupid tests. And he said, the test says you're going to be a garbage man. I said, well, New York City sanitation, and this was back then, they started off at like 55, 60 grand a year in full benefits. So I said to him, well, New York City sanitation starts off at like 50, 60 G's full bennies. I said, isn't that more than you make as a guidance counselor working in the school system? And he threw me out of his office. Didn't like that. So I would have been a garbage man. I mean, and I lived in Jersey. I lived right outside the city. But yeah, I mean, all kidding aside, like, it's not a bad job, by the way, to throw trash. I mean, somebody's got to do it, and big deal. But you see, what they were trying to do is they were trying to direct me and tell me I was stupid, and I knew I wasn't. I mean, good school system.
Yes,
it was because I didn't. Again, it was an assembly line, and I was a product.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah,
didn't fit in.
Stamp USDA on your ass and send you on your way.
Bingo. Dude, I know a lot of people that, like, really smart people that went to college right after we graduated high school, and 4 years later they had a degree and they're working in a deli. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Oh, I got a degree in liberal arts.
Man, the competition is just so great for jobs these days, it's not even funny.
Even if you have a degree in a specific thing, it's hard. Because the jobs just aren't there. And actually, the economy and jobs, that's what we're going to get into on the other side, because we have about a minute before the break comes up. But, there's a couple of reasons why there are no jobs, which we're going to get into. But people don't realize that. You don't see that. You see, go to college. It's still that old train of thought that go to college, spend $100,000 or $200,000 and get yourself in debt, and then you get out and you can't even get a job at McDonald's. How do you? Who's benefiting? Who's the one that makes out at the end of the day with all the college loans? Think about it. The banks, right?
The banks are the ones that really profit from it all.
Well, it's almost like funding both sides of a war. You're going to profit. So you give grants or whatever, do whatever you got to do to help schools, and then you convince everybody in the general public that they should go to school, and that's what they need to do is go get a college education. You need it. You need to get a loan. That's the American way. That's the American dream. By the way, it only used to cost about $2,500, to get a degree, as opposed to like $100,000. But I guess that's also got something to do with the dollar. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get right back into it. The economy and jobs, because that's where we were headed.
Yeah.
Joe, the jobs report came out today, right?
Ugh.
Even MSNBC, the total propaganda mouthpiece network.
Oh man, yeah. Even they're depressed.
Hey, dude, there was a segment on Morning Joe that you had played the audio for me before.
Yeah.
Where it was just, and I mean, it's not. I don't even have to play it, but I mean, you could look it up if you'd like. I'm saying that to the listeners, but even then, even these guys were like, "Oh my God, these numbers are dismal." So when your cheerleading squad is out there telling you that the numbers are dismal. What was it that I saw the headline on Drudge? It was for every one job created, 5 were lost.
Yep. That's pretty much how we're going right now. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I'm not a mathematician, okay? So don't quote me on this. But, I could be wrong, perhaps, I guess. But I'm not a mathematician. But wouldn't basic math tell you that gaining 1 and losing 5 does not get you ahead at all?
No, that's fairly catastrophic, actually.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me and my basic math skills that were,
No.
Okay.
No, I think they're working quite well, actually.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure, because, my sarcasm is you don't need to be a mathematician to see this. If someone says, well, you don't understand numbers. No, you don't really have to be, you don't have to be running around teaching people chaos theory to understand that gaining 1 and losing 5 does not help. At all. Like, let's do that with your checkbook, okay?
Yeah.
Let's do that with your checking account, okay? For every $100 you deposit, I take out $500.
That's how our government operates.
Exactly. Let's see how long that lasts.
Yeah, we'll find out. No, but I mean, it was actually kind of funny to hear them act the way they did when the jobs report came out. I gotta play this for everybody because this is just crazy. And then you could tear it up because I know you're going to tear it up.
All right, the new monthly jobs report's just crossed. We get the numbers now from CNBC's Michelle Caruso-Cabrera. Michelle.
Ugly number.
Oh.
Number of jobs created in December, 74,000. The expectation was 200,000.
Oh.
There's some talk that maybe the cold weather kept some folks at home.
Okay, wait a minute. Stop.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier. The cold weather? Really?
Yes, the cold weather. Yes, because you see, when people get into business, they actually only do it during fair weather conditions, and during the winter they actually hibernate.
Well, didn't you know that apparently the economy after I think it's 32 degrees, not only does water freeze, but I think this is on the books that at 32 degrees, water freezes and the economy shuts down.
Yes, and credit freezes too.
Right, everything just stops. No EMS. Hospitals, doctors are like, hey, it's 32 degrees outside. You got to go home. And the patient's like, we're in the middle of surgery. I don't care. It's 32 degrees.
32 degrees. Time to go home.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay. Cold weather stops people from working?
Oh yeah. Here we go. Let's continue.
They're not looking or hurt construction jobs,
Michelle,
for example.
that's a horrific number. That's one of the lowest numbers we've seen in years.
Since January of 2011.
Oh,
very, very bad.
Gosh. And so can it just all be, I mean, our economy's pretty large. Could cold weather really knock it down to that low of a number?
When I look at construction jobs declining for the first time in a very long time, that might suggest it, but also...
Yeah, okay, wait a minute. Construction jobs declining. Is it the winter?
Dude, holy speculation, Batman.
I know, and it's like, well, let me just grasp at this straw right here and see what we can... Ooh, construction jobs.
Well, hey, while we're at it, the sky is blue because God has a giant marker that's blue, and he decided to color. Really? I mean, and I'm not bashing anybody's spiritual beliefs or anything like that. I'm just using it as an absurd example to explain things away easily, or just these people, everything with them is an explanation that they pull out of their rear end and out of nowhere. It's amazing. No matter what. Oh, by the way, the global warming ship that got stuck in ice. I love how media's been. A bunch of tourists. They're not a bunch of tourists. They were going out there to prove global warming and Man-Bear Pig is going to eat us, and they got stuck in ice.
Unbelievable.
Ice. But don't worry about that because of global warming. And then the polar vortex is from global warming. Even though back in the 70s, the polar vortex, when you and I were kids and being born, the polar vortex phenomenon that was going on back then, same thing. Well, no, it wasn't from global warming. Back then it was global cooling, Joe.
Yes, of course.
But it's global something. They just don't know what it is yet. But they have the answer to it, even though they're not sure if it's cooling or getting hotter.
It's called solar activity. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, our weather mimics what really the sun activity does. And
Stop it.
I know.
That's science.
But that's
Stop it.
But I gotta, because the carbon tax.
Stop it. That's what's going to save us. Don't
high.
you understand? Al Gore is trying to save the world. You're just jealous of him.
I want my red stapler.
Yeah, that's basically his audience at this point. Seriously. I mean, and dude, I get in this argument with people, you're a denier. I still have, I live in an area where there still is a lot of
ignorance?
Yes, I guess you could put it that way. And I if I get in conversations with, random people I know here or there, about this, well, you can't tell me that the climate hasn't acted weird. No, it has. But you see, they're playing with it. Oh, so here we go. Let me guess. You're one of those people that thinks they spray things into the sky. Oh, you mean geoengineering or weather modification?
Yeah, no, they don't know.
Something they've been doing since the early 60s? I'm sorry,
No.
They only used it as a weapon during the Vietnam War to take out the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Yeah. Oh, what? Huh? Yeah, they dropped more bombs on the Ho Chi Minh Trail than all of Europe during World War II, yet couldn't stop the supply run because they were using ox cart.
What about their testing even before that? Remember the one over Britain where they
that was in the 50s. They ended up flooding a village.
They overseeded the clouds.
Yeah, but Joe, they don't do this. That's
no.
That's fantasy. Stop it. You're trying to scare people. Are you trying to make money? It's to the point where I was at the other day. I had to go see the physical therapist, and they wanted to check how the ankle was healing and everything, right? So I go to the physical therapist, and we get out, and I'm getting myself in the wheelchair, and I look up, and even my wife, who she's not connected to this, but she's aware as to what's going on. She looks up and goes, just belts out, "Really? Really?" And I look up, and dude, it was like a checkerboard. And it was just blatant. This is not air traffic, okay? You can't tell me. And they were in the middle of spraying, and it was, they have 3 levels of spraying. Sometimes they'll spray a couple spots here or there, and then other times they spray it like a checkerboard. And when they do the checkerboard, it's two levels of checkerboard or lines. Even if they're not like a checkerboard, even if they're just lines all over the place, they either oversaturate the hell out of the sky or they do a medium blend of it. But when they do, and I think that's when they're seeding the clouds or doing the aluminum, the smaller ones where it's just a line here or there, if you look, usually are at the outer edges of storms or storm systems. At least that's what they do down here in the Caribbean. And that's one of the things that they admit that they use this for, is to mark the edge of storm systems, and that comes for weather control, especially with HARP when they create high pressure domes and stuff. They can mark the edges of these storms sometimes, and then they can go in and they'll seed the cloud, and sometimes they'll mess around and put desiccant in the air and keep the water from raining down on top of. Anyway, we got getting sidetracked, but I'll have to do it. I'll have to have Mike Murphy on again to talk about.
It's all tinfoil hattery.
Yeah, I know. I mean, all you could do is look up. The sky didn't look like that when we were kids. Case in point, you want to challenge? Anybody wants to challenge that notion that, that's always been around? Okay, go look through your family photo albums from when you were a kid or when you went on family vacations, and I'm guaranteeing you will have pictures of the sky. Now, you tell me if you can find pictures of the sky that look like that. Even with the old haze on the photographs, they won't look like it does today. You can't tell me that I'm old enough to remember that the sky didn't always look like this. This started heavily in the 90s. About mid-90s when you started seeing this. And I remember even saying things to my mother back then about it, like, hey, you notice all this weird stuff in the sky that just kind of never goes away after the jet leaves it there? And
Short Circuit, the movie. There's chemtrails in it.
Is it?
Yeah.
The first one?
The first one.
Well, even Snoring Dog is surprised.
I know.
But, they now when you look at pictures like Media Production Company, when they even do the background and they put the sky in the background, there's chemtrails, even in those. Or
I know.
In movies, like animated
Cars?
movies. Yep. And whenever you watch TV shows, my wife used to like to watch, what's that show, Breaking Bad? Every time because they used to shoot out in New Mexico and I guess Arizona and around the desert area there, they would be doing all the shots and they would always have these awesome picturesque backgrounds with the desert the way it is, and then sometimes the mountains in the background and everything, and the sky and the horizon and everything, and it would be beautiful, and then you would see lines going across the sky. Sometimes you'd even see the jet flying across Sprang in the background. But that's normal. And the reason why they do air that is because if your subconscious is oversaturated with it, you're just going to think that you're going to grow up, especially the younger generations are going to grow up going, I always remember the sky being like that. Because they don't remember a time without it. It's like they don't remember a time without cell phones or the internet either. But anyway, I digress. So getting back to jobs, that clip is very telling, Joe. I'm glad you actually played the audio from that. It's just very telling when their little mouthpieces don't even want to have any part of it. And they can't even lie about the job numbers anymore.
Yeah. Well, think about this. There was that case in Hagerstown, Maryland, recently where they had that it was Shenandoah Family Farms ice cream plant, and they had 36 job openings, 1,600 applicants applied. I mean, that's unbelievable. The unemployment rate just went from 7.0 to 6.7, but not because there are more jobs, because more people are dropping out of the workforce than ever before. Now there's 92 million people out of the workforce, and those are people that are of working age, able to work a full-time job.
See, I don't like the term dropping out because that almost makes you think that these people are like,
they're choosing to, right?
They're like, F working, I'm going to go sit on my ass. I'm out. That's not what's going on. One of the largest problems is Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it, is causing a lot of problems because a lot of these companies either don't want to. And, honestly, it's not even maybe the bigger corporations, like Target and Walmart, if they cut an employee's salary. Okay, them I would say, they're just being tightwads. But the smaller companies, these mom and pop corporations and, whatever, when I say mom and pop, it doesn't always mean it's two old people. Small business will say, these small business owners can't afford to now, pay somebody a decent, say they have that they have 5 full-time employees, and they want to be able to pay these full-time employees instead of maybe the job that they do, the full-time employee would normally get $50,000, but because they make these people are really hard workers and the small company can afford it, they were paying them $65,000 each. Well, now because they're full-time employees, on top of it, they have to pay for full-time. They have to pay for health benefits now. So because that's going to come down the pike, it doesn't matter if they put that mandate back a year or not. These companies already know this, so they're getting ahead of time. They're laying people off or closing. So you're A lot of small businesses are going down the drain. Poof, there goes small businesses. And B, people are losing jobs. The only jobs that are getting created are in government. Police, things like that. Prison guards, the military. It's the only thing that they're building up. And let me tell you something. That's not a job. That's not something that supports the economy. It's a crap job. Oh, I know I'm going to get a lot. I have friends that are cops are going to go, well, you're telling me my job is crap? I don't, for different reasons. We can get into that. We could even debate that, but that's besides the point. It's not a productive job. Government jobs are never really productive jobs. Productive jobs are people that create things, manufacturing jobs, stuff like that. Those are all getting killed and shut down. Most of it's been sent overseas. Then you have the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which I talked about last night.
Yep.
Literally bans buy local.
Yeah. Says who?
Right,
That's my thing. Says who?
Says some douchebag bureaucrat.
Good. Make us stop.
Right. Come tell me I can't eat local foods.
Right.
Come tell me, please. You can
make us stop.
Yeah, right. And if everybody if the whole town, country, city, counties, whatever, stood up like that, it would be that simple. And people are like, no, it's not that simple. Yeah, it really is, because
it is.
Let them send in their heavy-handed groups. If an entire county or an entire state said, no, you can kiss my butt. Look what happened with the food plan, right? It started with one school and spread all over the place, right? All it took was one school to say, yeah, we're not going to deal with Michelle Obama's, lunch food, health care, health standards, because we're not going to sign on to it. We're not going to participate in it, whatever you want to call it. They opted out because it was causing a lot of problems, and it was a lot of garbage food. It wasn't even the healthier stuff. A lot of it was GMO garbage that these kids were getting fed, and they weren't eating it. Like the stuff that they were being forced to eat, they didn't want to eat, and the portions weren't adequate. It was just totally inadequate, and the people on the ground, boots on the ground, teachers, school administrators, whatever, lunch officials, nutritionists, whatever you have at the school. We called her the lunch lady when I was a kid. Okay. But whatever you want to call it, and whoever runs the food programs there, they fought back and said no, and eventually it started spreading because these other schools went, hey, they said no, screw it, we'll do it too. And then people went, oh, look, 2 schools said no, I'll stand up. And then suddenly it was 50 schools, and then however many now. Right?
Same thing with this fight on marijuana, They got a couple of states legalizing it now. Now 4 more states are considering putting it on the ballot this November, and people are just gonna keep doing it. And I always equate it to the person that stands against the wall. If you got a bunch of Marines hanging around, guess what? They all fall in line. They all get in line. That's what they do. There's some people that out there that need to be led. That's why you have to lead the charge. It's amazing. Amazing how unmotivated people are with such serious things that are going on in the economy, But there's other signs too. Again, the labor participation rate, 91.8 million unemployed. The amount of people in the workforce now equals 1978 levels.
Yeah, but you know what's really messed up is we were talking about this earlier off air.
Yeah.
The total amount now, they were saying something, what was it, 91, not, what are the total numbers now out of the workforce? Like 91 million?
91.8.
Okay. So it's almost like 92 million. That's more than a quarter and a little bit less than a third of the population of this country, dude.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, but
that's more than 20. That's at least, that means that the unemployment rate is at least, if you understand basic math and you just looked at it, no, we get the unemployment rate from a different calculation. I'm sure you do, lying sacks of crap. But if you think about it, that means the real unemployment rate lies somewhere between 25 and 33%.
It could very well be.
That's a quarter and a third. So somewhere between 25 and 33% is about where the real unemployment percentage lies. If there are 91.8 million Americans out of work, there's roughly 350 million in the country. So 350, do a percentage rating. It's somewhere around like I would say between a quarter and it's not quite a third, but it's a little bit more than a quarter, I would say. That's just rough math in my head. I could be a bit off, but it's around that area of the general public that's out of work. Now, how about take out how many of those millions are children or not of working age? So minus that number. And then really go back and minus the 91.8 million people out of there, and then tell me if it's not a bigger percentage than we're being told.
It's right now, according to John Williams of shadowstats.com, real unemployment is right around 24%.
All right, so there you go. Rough math in my head. I'm not even an economist.
Yep.
So
you've got the U3 number, which is your official number. That's at 6.7, and then you have the U6, which is your broadest measure that the government measures, including short-term discouraged and other marginally attached workers, as well as those forced to work part-time because they can't work full-time. That's around 14%. But the real unemployment rate's actually around 24%.
And then the new thing now is that people are working 2 part-time jobs or even 3.
Right.
And I've seen articles.
That's if they can get 3.
Well, that's true. Is the age of the full-time job over? Well, until you get rid of the Affordable Care Act, yeah. Actually, I think that
that thing's rid of a lot of things.
But that thing's going to destroy itself. By the way.
Oh yeah. No, that was a good thing to happen. Believe it or not,
it can't survive under its own weight.
No, it can't. It's really
it's the spruce goose of laws. But it's not a law, it's a tax. But it's not a tax, it's a law. Well, which one is it? The Supreme Court said it's a tax, and Obama's like, no, they didn't. The only way it was upheld was they said it was a tax, you liar.
What's really got this country in the doldrums is the free trade agreements. NAFTA, CAFTA, the TPP, all of these free trade agreements that we've entered into. Globalism has totally and completely decimated our economy, decimated our workforce, and at the same time, it's promoted this level of perceived prosperity. And where I say that is, you remember the time when TVs and everything else were made in America, and they were a lot more expensive because American workers were making them, and they get paid a lot more.
And they lasted back then, too, by the way.
Yeah, but could you imagine what a TV would cost today if it was made in America, and salaries continue to climb, say at 5% a year, because this is the way the Fed works. You got to have inflation, but you have like that cost of living increased, and without free trade agreements and tariffs being put in place, you actually have manufacturing here. The thing is things are going to cost you a lot more when they're manufactured here. So that means you got to have like one TV in the house, or you don't have all these 542 appliances, but you also don't have a $200 flat screen. You know what I mean? It's a false perception that prices are staying the same or they're getting cheaper, when in reality they're not. You're just getting crap, and you're paying for slave labor instead of your traditional American workforce. So it's a false sense of prosperity that it's just not real.
Well, it's also that this country has to learn to, we have to learn to live within our means. And again, a lot of people don't realize, but that's been subconsciously programmed into you from the time you're very young, about credit cards. You still see commercials for credit cards on TV. They've been on TV since as long as I can remember. Even when they used to turn the TV off at midnight and then put the American flag on, and then sometimes they'd have the log burning or whatever. Usually, if it wasn't Christmas, it was the American flag waving for, whatever it was, 6, 8 hours until the morning programming came on. But even then they had commercials for credit cards.
Yep.
So it's always been about put it on credit, spend money you don't have. Like Tyler Durden said in Fight Club, they have people working like slaves at jobs they hate to pay off bills because they've spent money that they do not have, i.e. credit, for crap they do not need, i.e. all this garbage. Do you really need 6 flat screen TVs in your house?
No, of course you don't.
I have 2 televisions in my house, okay? 2. One in my living room, one in my bedroom. That is it, okay? And the one in my bedroom is an old tube TV. It's probably about 15 years old, and I love it. Anyway, they spend money to buy crap. They spend money to buy crap that they do not need to impress people that they don't even really like. They just want to feel that these people look up to them.
Status symbol, yeah.
Who gives a crap? Who cares? Wait, my neighbor has a huge TV. Good for him. You know what? You ought to look at your neighbor, shake his hand, and say, you know what? I'm glad you could afford that nice television. That's awesome.
It's societal poison.
Yes, I'm glad that you're able to do that. I'm glad you're able to afford that. I'm glad that you're whatever. Luck's been good or however. Instead, nope. People get jealous because we've been programmed to be that way. Consumerism. You just buy. Black Friday. People lining up. It's not even Black Friday now. They call it Black Thursday because they on Thanksgiving they line up to get TVs and stuff. $100 off a flat screen or $50 off an Xbox. I mean, really? You're all pathetic. Do you not look at yourselves afterwards and go, wow, I was part of that?
Exactly.
I mean, that's what's wrong with this country. When I was a kid, we had one TV in the living room and then a 12-inch black and white.
Yeah, in the kitchen.
Yeah. And later on, I think when I was 11 or 12 years old, my father got a deal on 2 color televisions that were 20-inch or 25-inch TVs or something like that. And he got them, and he got me, and they were Sylvanias. And he got one for me and one for my brother. And I wasn't even really allowed to watch it unless I did my homework. And half the time my mother had my father, she had him build this little box to put the plug in and lock it up with a padlock because I was in trouble all the time, so that was my punishment. So I didn't even really watch as much TV as most kids would have. And to me, that was a big thing to even have my own television, and it wasn't even huge. Today kids have 70.
I got a 13-inch TV when I was 13 years old.
Yeah, when I was a teenager.
I had to share that with my brother, yeah.
Yeah, and I was amazed. I was like, oh my God, this TV is huge. Until that, dude, I was watching this little 12-inch black and white in my kitchen.
Yep.
My mom, in fact, when my mom passed, she still had the little 12-inch black and white, but it was starting to go out. So my uncle ended up taking it, I think, and getting it fixed, but he's got it. It's a little 12-inch black and white TV. I think it still probably works to this day.
I'll bet you it does.
With the UHF, VHF knob, remember that? Sure. Oh, wow. Okay, there's probably some listeners that are going, what's UHF? What's VHF?
Yeah,
bye. All right, break sneaking up on us. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We get back. We're going to get into veteran suicide rates, war on drugs, and more. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com, hanging out with my good friend, fellow radio show host, researcher, and Joe's like a brother to me, my brother, Mr. Joe Joseph.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
So, Joe, let's start off. I want to get into the war on drugs and some Veterans Affairs issues and stuff. So let's start off with the more somber stuff because we could end, when we get into the war on drugs, we could also, at the end of the broadcast, we could probably, give out a little bit of positivity and solutions, which I like to do. I know you do as well. So
yeah,
let's get into the more difficult stuff since to start off hour number 2, and then we can get into the war on drugs. The uptick in veteran suicides.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's actually become an epidemic. Matter of fact, the Army's finally admitting that toxic leadership is to blame for this massive veteran suicide problem. And freepatriot.org is really kind of blowing the lid on this. They said, for the first time in human history, more troops have died by taking their own lives after returning from war, the wars in the Middle East, than die on the battlefield. Currently, there are 22 U.S. veterans a day taking their own lives after having made it home from deployment. This, according to the latest numbers released by the VA. However, these numbers only include soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen who were on active duty. National Guard and reservist numbers are not included in this tally, and at the height of the wars, Guard and reservist members made up the majority of the troops deployed. So if their numbers were counted in the tally, the suicide rate would be as high as 80% greater than what's being reported. So it's actually a lot worse than it actually is. It's kind of like unemployment numbers. Yeah.
Well, of course. And when you hear them, and I've pointed this out, when you hear them give out the suicide numbers for veterans, what do you hear them give out? They usually only give out one branch.
Yeah.
They'll be talking about the Marines or the Air Force or the Army. I've actually never seen them publicly talk about Navy suicides or Coast Guard suicides. I know they both happen. I know guys killed themselves when I was in the Guard. I know it happened. You know what I mean? Like, I know it did. One person I went to boot camp with killed themselves. They were at one of the Loran stations out in, like, Attu, Alaska, out in the middle of freaking nowhere. And I
thought you meant at boot camp. I was going to say, like,
well, no, we had them.
Private Pile?
No, we didn't. I don't think we had any suicides at boot camp. We did have somebody fell out of one of the top racks because, you know, they had the 3 high racks, the old school ones. Yeah. And they rolled, like, Vietnam style, and they rolled out of the top rack in the middle of the night, cracked their skull open. We had people, like, go AWOL and stuff, but I don't know. I'm sure there were people that committed suicide there. I mean...
Well, it's a lot worse now, though, because, I mean, of all the different wars that we're in and everything else, and they're just coming back screwed up for a number of reasons.
Well, part of the problem is boot camp, because you have the training that we went through was hardcore, you know, and they were mean to us. Not only... I mean, you go through a certain physical training, but the mental training, the screaming and the yelling is there to toughen you up. And because when you're in the middle of a battle, they're screaming and yelling. You're not like, "Excuse me, Joe, could you pass me the bullets? Yes, I want to throw some lead at our enemies downrange." No. I mean, you might say throw lead or sling lead, but you're certainly not, "Please pass me the bullets." It's throw me the effing magazine.
Yeah.
You know, or out of ammo, and a magazine comes flying at you from somewhere off to the left or to the right. They have to toughen people up, and now you have these kids getting stress cards. You know, and now they're allowed to pull stress cards on the company commander or the drill instructor, depending on if you were in the Marines, Coast Guard, or Navy, or Air Force, or Army.
Yeah, I'd tear it up.
And but dude, like, and I know that boot camp, a lot of it is brainwashing and stress positions, and I would even say to a certain degree there's torture that goes on, because depending on what drill instructor, okay? But, I understand also being in the military and having gone through it, I understand there is some part of it is to get you to be brainwashed and just accept orders, but there's also part of it is there to save you. Like, it's stuff that later on when you're in combat or whatnot or whatever you're doing, people always say, what do they say? I reverted back to my earlier training, and that's what saved my life. Of course, that's why they do it. Now you're making these guys that say the drill instructor is yelling at you to stress you out. They're doing it to put you in that same level of stress that you would be at if you had bullets whipping at your head from whoever you're in a firefight with. And you pull your stress card in boot camp. Well, try doing that when you're in a firefight with your enemy.
Can't do it.
You're like, imagine you're laying down with like 2 or 3 other guys. You're under heavy suppressive fire, and you're trying to figure out what to do. And the guy next to you is reaching for his card, and you're like looking in his pockets, and you're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm looking for my stress card, so they'll stop shooting at us."
Yeah, right.
It doesn't work that way.
No, it sure doesn't. Now, many people have blamed over-medicating veterans as the root cause. And though maybe a primary cause, this theory left something missing. And what they've come to find out, and what the Army is now admitting, is that as much as 20% of its leadership within the ranks is what they consider toxic, as in abusive, selfish, narcissistic, and demeaning towards their subordinates.
Well, case in point, I talked about this before, and I said to you, I was talking to you about this off air earlier. The warrior transition units.
Oh, yeah.
These guys go to these warrior transition units, and they have whatever, PTS, some sort of, most of them have physical. I mean, if you have the physical, scars, a lot of these guys are going to, even if they have physical scars, they're going to have anxiety or some sort of an emotional scar until they've been able to deal with it. And by the way, PTS doesn't mean that they'll never be the same again.
Right.
They can get themselves back in order, and it's more of a matter of being out of touch with your own your central nervous system, your soul, and your body. It's the three are almost disconnected from each other just because of the traumatic experience, and it's something that's naturally that happens to the human body. And treating them like criminals, is wrong, and treating them like malingerers is wrong too. And that's what see, Joe. You know what I'm talking about? That
Sure.
Old school mentality of "shake it off, pussy," "shut up, private," shut your mouth. Don't be a pussy and get back to work. You know what I'm talking about. That's exactly what they do in these warrior transition units. Some of these guys watch their friends get blown up by IEDs, turn into pink mist. And these guys have, I mean, maybe they're missing a leg, maybe whatever, they're recovering from something, and they're getting brought up on charges because they can't make it to 7 o'clock muster.
I know, it's crazy.
I mean, you have a hard-ass dude. Can you imagine that? I mean, it's bad enough you have a hard-ass commander or whatever he is, sergeant, whatever. You have a hard-ass, commander in your chain of command busting your balls about showing up late as it is if you were, at 7 a.m. for regular muster. But now you're like missing a leg because you actually were fighting the enemy, and this guy's treating you like a malingering scumbag, and you wonder why these kids blow their brains out.
Yeah, the Army defines toxic leadership as a combination of self-centered attitudes, motivations, and behaviors that have adverse effects on subordinates, the organization, and mission performance. This leader lacks concern for others and the climate of the organization, which leads to short and long-term negative effects. The toxic leader operates with an inflated sense of self-worth and from acute self-interest. Toxic leaders consistently use dysfunctional behaviors to deceive, intimidate, coerce, or unfairly punish others to get what they want for themselves. The negative leader completes short-term requirements by operating at the bottom of the continuum of commitment. Oh, I like that, continuum of commitment, where followers respond to the positional power of their leader to fulfill requests. This may achieve results in short term, but ignores the other leader competency categories of leads and develops. Prolonged use of negative leadership to influence followers undermines the followers' will, initiative, and potential and destroys unit morale. Duh.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out either, by the way.
No.
Just so we're clear on this.
Yep.
But see,
you're absolutely right.
This is what happens when you have over a decade of war now, and these kids were lied to.
They're just, and they're dehumanized.
And not just kids, even the older generations that went, they were lied to about the reasons for war with 9/11 and all that. And they had their emotions amped up. And then when their emotions were at this high state, they put them in training, and all during training, you're trained in order for you to kill your enemy, and they understand this because of World War II. A lot of things came out of World War II more than just what you realize. They learned a lot about battles. And one of the things that you have to do is they have to, in order to get more people to kill the other side a lot easier, and other countries do the same, they've learned from our practices, you have to dehumanize your enemy in the eyes of your troops, whether they be airmen, sailors, marines, soldiers, doesn't matter. You have to dehumanize the enemy, so that way it makes killing them much easier because they're not really humans. They can't equate and say, well, that person is the same as me. We're both humans. Why am I shooting at this person? Maybe that guy's got kids. Maybe his kids don't want to see daddy's head get blown off. Or why should I kill this guy? Maybe I'm in his country. Is he looking at me like an oppressive invading force? That's a lot of boot camp gets a lot of that out of you. But that's what happens. People just, first of all, they can't have you looking at things like that. They don't want you questioning things. I know boot camp, again, mind control, things like that. But the training does save you to a certain degree. Anyway, they can't have people thinking like that, right? Like normal humans. So they have to train these people. So then they go experience whatever. Even if they don't experience it, there's even a more disturbing trend that 50% of the suicides, these people weren't even deployed overseas. That they're here in the States, but they happen on bases here in the States, and these people were never exposed to combat. Something like 50%, you could look that number up, something like 50% of the suicides in the Army, this came out like 6 months ago or so, that like 50% of them are stateside. They never even went overseas, and they never even saw combat. They're here in the States because they realize what they're a part of, or they're exposed to this toxic leadership where it's, you're a piece of crap, you're this, you're that. And by the way, that whole dehumanization thing, teaching your troops that the enemy is less than human, that way it's easier to kill them. The problem with that is it also extends into the rank and file as well with how they treat one another. Why do you think you have such an epidemic of rape? Because men, men are taught that the women in that join the military are less than equal to them. And I'm not saying men and women. I know that men and women are a little bit different biologically, and yes, some women the female form in general, will say, to a certain extent, unless they're bigger and taller or whatnot, is built to, even though they can withstand more pain, the male body is more of a physical working body. We'll say they're built a little bit stronger and sturdier. We'll say, but and I'm not trying to be sexist or anything like that, but you have that already. That, yes, I understand that women and men are a little bit different, but in the military, men are taught that women are just pretty much morale gear. Okay, there's a lot of people that are going to say, no, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, but it is, though.
It is, okay? And they're taught that women are less than them. And then because they're already taught how to dehumanize the enemy, they do the same thing to each other. And then you have an epidemic of military sexual assault. I mean, they wonder why, it's easier for kids to kill, and they don't want to put a video game, connection to it and say that that doesn't desensitize the kids, right? Which it does. Well, it's the same thing. If you desensitize your soldiers and troops and stuff, and you teach them dehumanization techniques against the enemy and against other human beings, it's naturally not just going to stay with, well, it's just the Iraqis or it's just the Vietnamese. No. It's going to extend into other human beings because you've just taught one human being how to hate another human being depending on whatever, prejudice that they want to insert. And then you've taken it to another level because now they dehumanize it. And of course, again, the teaching of women as less than you is taught even to this day. I've aired audio from female Marines where they've said, look, we were told by our female drill instructor that that we're less than the men. Some of them said that you're going to experience, you're going to have guys hit on you or come on you or whatever. Look, it's an unfortunate aspect of what's going on. Being a veteran myself, retired military, I'm not proud of this fact. I'm not happy about it. I catch flack sometimes from people that say to me, not often, but I would say 98.9% of the feedback I get from vets is always positive about thank you for what you talk about. Once in a while I get somebody to say, you try to make the Guard look bad, if I criticize the Coast Guard, or you try to make the military in general look bad. No, I don't. I'm trying to bring some honor back to an institution that has been pissed on and crapped on by dirtbags, and the people that are being used and thrown through the mill. I'm tired of I'm one of them, and B, I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of seeing these young kids getting used. And if I can stop somebody from being used and abused, like myself and my friends, Joe and others, well, then I'll do everything I can. Okay? I'm not going to sit back and not say anything. You know who taught me about standing up? I mean, not that I didn't need to be taught. That's just the way I am. I would stand up for vets anyway. But
no need to thank me, Popeye. It's okay.
Well, one of the examples are the Vietnam vets because they stood up for our generation, Joe. The reason why, guys
Absolutely.
Your age and my age could even have veterans benefits, and the guys come back from Iraq and Afghanistan and have veterans benefits.
Because of that John Kerry character.
Well, no, he's a scumbag. It will be the Vietnam vets stood up for us because when I got out, they didn't take guys that were my age seriously. That's why it took me so long to get them. It took me 5 years to get the medical care that I needed, and by that time, some of the things that I needed, that I actually did need maybe a smaller operation on in the beginning, got worse. That's why my leg is so messed up, and they know that. They even admitted to that, but they didn't take young vets serious. So I try to look out for veterans as much as I can, and unfortunately, I do have to point out. I have to point all of this out. And one of the reasons I go into depth with pointing out, especially with the training that veterans go through or military men and women go through and the dehumanization and stuff, is so that people don't automatically, when you see something committed like, rape or war crimes, don't just automatically say, oh, those goddamn Marines or those goddamn soldiers or those, insert whatever service member here that screwed up. I don't want you to hate on them all, because not everybody is like that. And I don't even want you to really hate that person, because more than likely, 9 times out of 10, those people weren't even, and there are times that those people were sadistic before they went in, but the problem is, even Cheney said we're going to have to embrace the dark side. Remember right after 9/11, they talked about invading Iraq? We're going to have to embrace the dark side. Well, when you embrace the dark side, everybody has the capability of doing good or evil. And I've talked about this before. And that evil will come out. So instead of just hating the player, you should hate the whole game that's being played. Not just hating the player, because that's what happens. Is you ever notice when this stuff comes out in the media, what do, Joe? Just like with Abu Ghraib, with the prison scandal, they blamed a bunch of E3s, E4s, and E5s.
Always a bottom feeder, is a cannon fodder. That's right. It's always a little guy. The big fish never gets held to account. Every so often they make an example out of one, just to get it out there in the news to make it look like it's not that bad, but it is. It is. There's those E3s and everything else. They're doing it because they're being told to, meaning that, and when I say that, maybe not directly, but that's the way their leadership is acting. They're just following the leader. It's just too bad. Well, exactly, and it doesn't mean I'm condoning any war crimes or bad behavior. They should look. At the end of the day, they are responsible for their own actions. Which, if everybody takes that personal responsibility, then things would. If everybody just started doing that more and more, that's why I talk about it. And by the way, I don't just say it and not do it. I practice what I preach. But if I don't try to explain what's going on, I would be remiss in my duties. Okay, I wouldn't be doing my job as a broadcaster, as a truth teller, as someone that understands this, if I didn't explain to you everything. I want you to understand why that person did what they did. Not just that they did it, but why. Because if you understand why that person maybe went down that dark alley, because maybe they were pushed, the way the training and stuff like that, maybe if we understand it, we can stop that. Part of fixing a problem, or a major part of it, is understanding what's causing the problem. Yeah, you got to know what's broke first. Right. And we have to expose it. And the one thing I get is, well, don't you ever regret that you're disrespecting the people that died in the war in Iraq or in Afghanistan? And I'm like, first of all, I'm not disrespecting anybody that died. You're disrespecting them by just sitting on your rear end and not speaking up for them. I'm doing the right thing because nobody's speaking about this stuff. Not many people talk about this stuff. And if you hear veterans issues talked about, it's usually by some mouthpiece for some veterans organizations. Let me tell you something. Veterans organizations, more than half of them are useless. So, don't even get me started on that. This stuff needs to be talked about. You, as a free individual with a free thinking mind, need to get all the information so that you can understand why this happened. I don't want you to just, like I said, I don't want you to just blame the person, because that's what the powers that shouldn't be want. They want you to focus your attention. That's what the media does. They focus the attention on the one person, and all your hatred gets focused on that individual. Yeah. Boy, do we prejudge and everything else, It's crazy. Well, and the divide and conquer, too. It all feeds into it. Well, that's part of, that's the dehumanization. And when I brought up the video games thing before, kids are being desensitized to killing via video games. That's why when you see kids, especially if their parents didn't explain to them proper gun etiquette, they find their parent's gun or something and they shoot their friend. Well, part of that is they've shot their friend 1,000 times before online. And isn't it that I think even any gun trader will tell you this. I think it's 1,000. Special Forces knows this too. I think it's 1,000. It's either 1,000 or 1,500. I think it's 1,000 if I remember correctly. 1,000 times, once you do something 1,000 times, it becomes muscle memory. Like your body automatically does it. That's why they train, and the Marines and Special Forces and stuff train the way they train all the time, because it becomes muscle memory. So if a kid is playing in his mind, same thing, right? Because the brain is a muscle. He's playing in his mind a video game, and in his mind, his friend pissed him off, and he shot his friend in the face, 15, 16, 1,700 times, 2,000, 3,000 times online, and his friend respawns. He gets a real gun in his hand. The kid's only 15, 16 years old. People go, well, he's old enough to know right from wrong. He is. But his brain's also been programmed so much by the video game, perhaps it's a little hard for the kid to tell the difference between reality and the video game. And that happens. Because, again, the kid's mind is, malleable. Same reason why kids are pumped with
Call of Duty video games, and then at the same time the U.S. Army, is being sold to them. Hey, go join the Army.
Well, not only that, but again, it dehumanizes them from a very early age, and it really sets forth a precedent. Part of being able to control is through dehumanization, because if you dehumanize somebody, not only do they not have a moral compass, but they can't really understand rights. They can't understand the importance of defending them, because that's not their concern. They're at that point they're more concerned with input and all of the social media stuff, the gaming stuff. That takes precedent. Whereas if you try to keep them away from it, and I'm not saying don't have fun, don't get an Xbox, but at the same time, understand what you're doing and what effect it not only has on you, but your children.
It does, dude. It desensitizes people. And people can say no. But look, these first-person shooter video games were rooted in stuff that was developed by DARPA. Stuff that was a lot rougher, and that these video game companies were able to refine. And yes, the government has even gone to them and said, hey, can you make simulators for us or help us with simulator programs? But the original idea came from the government. Okay, again, World War II, they learned a lot. They started changing targets that the men shoot at after World War II. That's why the targets became silhouettes instead of bullseyes. Because people could shoot and hit a bullseye real easy, but when they came to a human being running at them, they wouldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
That's why you have silhouette targets. That's where that came from. Another thing that came about from World War II. They study wars and learn how to make it more efficient to train people to kill one another. And the amount of money that they spend doing that is insane. Now, can you imagine if they only spent that money actually taking care of sick people in this country? I'm all for people having healthcare, access to healthcare and being healthy and living longer and,
Sure.
not feeling any pain. How about we stop spending bazillions of dollars on war, literally, and trillions of dollars on war for nothing? For nothing. Okay.
Medicare, waste, fraud, and abuse over the next 10 years, $600 billion.
Right, and that's what we spent in a week over in Iraq and Afghanistan combined, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, I know, but $600 billion. You know how many people you could provide health care for with $600 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse just in that one government program? That's unbelievable. I'm sure a lot of people could get health care with that.
Yeah, but you know what they'll do, though? They'll turn around and they'll say that it's they'll turn around and they'll go after the people that do get disability that shouldn't get disability or whatever, and defraud the system, and then they'll use that as the excuse to make it even tougher for individuals that do need it to get it.
Right.
If you most of the time, the people that end up defrauding the system, 99.9% of the time, it's because there's a judge or somebody on the inside helping them out. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get through that stuff. You have to have somebody on the inside that can approve it, because you can have the greatest lawyer in the world, but if you really don't have issues, you go and have to sit in front of a judge and explain right to a judge all your ailments and prove that you're sick. You know what I'm saying? So unless you got somebody on the payroll to just rubber stamp it and go pa-ching because they're getting a cut. Anyway, break coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Final segment. Don't go anywhere. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment. Tonight's live edition. By the way, if you want to hear Joe's show, he's live Monday through Friday here on truthfrequencyradio.com, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that would be, 5 to 7 Pacific. So check his show out, Freedom Link Radio. He does a good show. His co-host, John's interesting character, to say the least.
Yes, he is.
John's a good guy.
John.
I like John. He's a good guy.
He sure is.
Taught me a lot about canning.
Yeah, he does.
I knew nothing about canning. I actually, I asked him a bazillion questions off air about it. He taught me a lot about it. So, John might be a crazy redneck, but he's definitely a smart, crazy redneck.
Yeah, he sure is.
So, tune into Joe's show. Now, Joe, last segment here, and I want to cover, if we cannot play that satirical TSA clip, if not, I'll see it for maybe, well, we'll probably play it tomorrow night on Hangar 18, because Hangar 18 is just, well, I'm sure if you've listened, you understand what Hangar 18 is.
Yeah.
Nothing like our shows. We're all professional and on point on our shows. And then Saturday night is like when we're all at the bar, basically.
Yep.
And you better watch out because it's on. Okay, so Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, Joe. You ever heard of them? LEAP?
Yes, I have.
Okay. One of the co-founders, creators, whatever, his name's Peter Christ. I have a piece of audio of him basically explaining, what it is, but why he's against prohibition, and explaining what LEAP is. And again, these are retired law enforcement officers and judges that are against prohibition. Let's just listen and hear what he has to say. And he answers a few common questions that might be thrown at him here or there. I'm going to do a more in-depth show. I'm going to see if I can actually get a representative from LEAP on the show. But
that would be cool.
In absence of that, there's plenty of stuff where they've done speeches and stuff, and people have recorded it. And I could even just do a whole show of playing that stuff and just hearing what these people have to say. But let's listen what the founder of LEAP, retired, I believe if I remember correctly, he's a retired police captain. His name's Peter Christ. Let's hear what he has to say about LEAP and prohibition.
I'm one of the co-founders of LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and why we came together as an organization in 2002 is because we see the failure of the policy of prohibition in our society. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they said, well, you think these gangsters will just become honest people if we legalize drugs? And my answer to them was no. The gangsters will stay gangsters, but most of the people that are involved in this illegal trade, you really wouldn't classify as gangsters. They're more like opportunists. To give you a quick example, in 1919, there was a homicide rate in this country. We instituted alcohol prohibition in 1920. The homicide rate in this country climbed every year until it peaked in 1933 when we legalized alcohol. And by 1937, the homicide rate in America was back down to the level it was at before alcohol prohibition started. And I want to point out one other thing about 1937. That was the deepest, darkest period of the Depression in this country. So there was a lot of angry people, but they weren't killing themselves anymore because we took the product away that they were killing themselves over. Legalization of drugs is not about the drugs. It is about the gangsterism and terrorism that is supported by the illegal marketplace in this country. Law enforcement was designed by a guy by the name of Robert Peel over in London, England in the early 1800s. And he designed an organization of law enforcement that would protect people from other people doing them harm. When you institute a prohibition like we have with drugs in this country, what you are doing is not protecting people from other people. You are attempting to use law enforcement to protect people from themselves. Protecting you from yourself is a function of family, church, education, and the healthcare system. It never is and never should have been intended to be a law enforcement function. We are out there enforcing morality when we enforce drug laws, and that is not our job. We were not trained to do it. We are not capable of doing it. And if anything else, you see the failure of it. We've been doing this for over 40 years since Nixon kicked it off, and the drugs are more available, pure quality, and cheaper than they've ever been before on the streets of America. And we've had 40,000 deaths in Mexico in the last 5 years fighting over this drug trade. Plus, we've destroyed more lives than the drugs have by incarcerating people and hanging felony convictions on them and denying them college educations, denying them jobs for no good reason. And one other thing I want to point out, just in case people think that if we do it hard enough, this is actually going to be doable to make drugs go away. We have the largest prison system on the planet. And I would like to point out one of the most efficient prison systems on the planet. And in that huge, efficient prison system, we do not have one drug-free prison in America. And if you cannot keep drugs out of prison, who is going to be delusional enough to think you can keep them out of a free society? We are spending $70 billion a year in this country trying to win this drug war. We could revert that to using that in our prison systems, in the treatment community. We can spend that money other ways. Plus, if we legalize it, I'm sure we're going to tax it. course we're going to tax it. We're going to generate income from it. Plus, we'll create jobs. Plus, we'll bring the hemp industry back, which was also outlawed in the 1930s when they outlawed marijuana. And the hemp industry is a very strong industry. I speak to a lot of Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, Lions clubs, and I start out my presentation by asking them, do you think we can win the war on drugs? Now, let's define what winning war means. We won the Second World War. We don't fight the Germans and the Italians and the Japanese every once in a while. The war's over. We won it. It's done. Okay? That's what one war was. So if we win the war on drugs, that means we've taken the word marijuana and heroin out of the dictionary because we've defeated the drugs. They're gone. And I ask people to raise their hands, and nobody ever puts their hand up to think that's possible. So now let's change the discussion. If instead of talking about things like drug-free and winning the war on drugs, we start saying things like drugs are always going to be in our society, they're always going to be here, which group of people do you want to run the marketplace? Do you want it run by gangsters, thugs, and terrorists who have 13-year-old children selling drugs on street corners? Or do you think that maybe a licensed, regulated marketplace where we can set age limits and distribution points and control purity of drugs is a better system? Call me crazy, but I'm not a prohibitionist. This isn't going to solve our drug problem. We have to deal with our drug problem as an educational and a healthcare issue.
So wait, my question would be then, if you're legalizing drugs, doesn't that promote more usage?
I don't know, does it? How many people do you think in America are not using cocaine because they can't get it?
So we're saying we're going to take this down to its most minute point and say, just like a pack of cigarettes, if you choose not to smoke, you're not going to do heroin, you're not going to do cocaine.
It's interesting when you mention tobacco, because one of the comments I get from people all the time is, if we legalize drugs, what kind of a message does that send to our children? It's condoning. It's saying that drugs are really okay. If you ask any tobacco smoker who's been smoking more than 20 years, if they ever felt condoned in this society, they'll tell you, oh yeah, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I felt absolutely condoned. Every place I walked into, there was an ashtray. I could smoke on an airplane all the way from New York to Los Angeles. You ask cigarette smokers today if they feel condoned, and they'll tell you no. They feel barely tolerated by the rest of society. And let's also point out another victory. We have gotten 50% of the adult cigarette smokers to quit smoking in the last 10 years without banning one cigarette, without burning or poisoning one tobacco field, just by simply making it less easy for people to smoke, and also by talking against it and pointing out the errors of it. That's the things that work. You know, the drug czar said the other day at a press conference, this drug issue in America is fundamentally a healthcare and an educational problem. And nobody asked him, what other healthcare and educational problems do you think we should use the criminal justice system as our main approach to? Because I can't think of any.
So you say do away with all the laws and rules and regulations. Again, you can drink alcohol out in public. I don't know if I would want to see someone shooting up, some heroin next to me.
You set regulations. We are setting different regulations than we have ever had in this country for tobacco use. We are now preventing people from smoking in the park in some places, from smoking on the street. We don't allow people to walk down Main Street unless they change the laws since I retired, but it used to be illegal to walk down drinking a can of beer. You couldn't do that. So those are things we have to do. I just want to remind you, in 1933, when we legalized alcohol, the federal government didn't legalize alcohol and set up a whole regulatory system for the country for alcohol. They basically got out of the prohibition business and said to the states, regulate it any way you want to. Mississippi didn't end their alcohol prohibition until around 1970. Those are local things to do. What we're trying to do is get the federal government out of the prohibition business and let the law enforcement go back to doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's protecting people from each other. 20 years of police work, working in the town of Tonawanda community, about 80,000 people. I remember two incidents. One was a father who found out that his son had committed a rape, and he turned his son into the police for that rape. Another one was a mother who found out that her son was committing burglaries, and she turned her son in for committing burglaries. Not once in 20 years did a parent ever turn their child in for drugs. Not once. And I can't believe that out of 80,000 people, some mother or father didn't find in the sock drawer a little baggie with something in it. But when it was their child, the last thought in the world was to turn this over to the police. They found other ways to deal with that problem. And we as a society should find other ways. We have 450,000 deaths a year. It used to be, it's probably down a little bit due to tobacco. 150,000 deaths a year due to alcohol. Now, my question is, when you look at all the illegal drugs and you only have 30,000 deaths a year from all illegal drugs combined, the question is, if prohibition is such a good idea, why don't we bring back alcohol prohibition and prohibit tobacco? If it's a good idea, let's do it with all the things we don't like. And the reality is, when I say that to people, they look at me and say, well, that doesn't work. And that's absolutely right. Prohibition doesn't work.
Bam. And again, he wasn't saying, oh, do it and, so people can go get high, let them just recreational use it, who cares, everybody should smoke, blah. This is law enforcement saying, look, this retarded war on drugs is not working, you're only empowering the cartels, you're really not helping anybody, treat it as a public health issue. Now, of course, the other danger with that is with things like Obamacare, then you have, suddenly this the health police too. And you don't want that either. But there was another interview, I might air this, I'll have to air, I will air this another night. But it was the one I was listening to earlier off air. The guy is a retired, if I remember correctly, he was one of the retired detectives. And he's like one of the other founders of LEAP. And this other, obviously this guy must have been a law enforcement officer that was interviewing him. And I told you, he was like, oh, you're disrespecting all the cops that died in the line of duty in the war on drugs by talking about this. You should be against drugs. But, he got into it with this guy. But one of the things that I liked is the guy said to him, well, I've done my research and there's no, there's a lot of people that say that there's health benefits to cannabis, and I haven't seen any studies that show that there's any health benefits to cannabis other than maybe, someone uses it for anxiety or something. He's like, but I haven't seen any other I haven't seen any studies to show any proof that there's any other health benefits. And this retired cop looks at him and goes, well, then you haven't looked that hard. And I was like, damn! That's what we need. We need someone. We do. We need more law enforcement to talk like that. And by the way, I put out a call on my Facebook page and I'll say it on air, any active duty, currently active or retired law enforcement who would like to come on, if you want to come on under an assumed name, that's fine, I don't care. You want to come on and discuss the war on drugs, the police state, and police brutality with me? I would love to have you on. And it does not matter whether or not you're for it or against it. If you're for it, you can come on and we can debate it. Like, gentlemen, if you're just going to come on and be a screaming idiot, then you'll get hanged up on, or hung up on, I should say. Listen, I'm like, oh my God, I went to public school. You'll get hung up on rather quickly. But I would appreciate if you want to debate it with me. That's fine. You can come on. And if you're retired or even current and you have a problem with it, and especially if you're retired, because that would mean you're older school, and you remember how it used to be when you guys were peace officers. You want to come on and you want to, you want to blast the police state and police brutality in the war on drugs? Hit me up. I'll throw out the email. It's the full word contact. So spelled out, and I have to say this because people get confused when I say this. The email address, you spell out the full word, contact, and then DTRH at yahoo.com. Again, contact, the full word spelled out, DTRH at yahoo.com. So it's contact, DTRH at yahoo.com. Email me, hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and we'll set something up, because we really need more people like this, Joe, to speak out. We need law enforcement to speak to other law enforcement. Get through that brainwashing from the police academy. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. But I mean, problem is that, we've had such a move afoot since 9/11, and even before that, to militarize the
the police in this country. Obama just basically said what other presidents had been implementing before him, which is, we need a new police force, a more powerful one, that's more powerful than the Army and this and that and everything else. And the plan was already well underway with the 1033 program, and as a matter of fact, if you look it up now, just Google search 10-33, you'll see every state has regulations regarding the use of the 1033 program and how they use it, how you go about using it. So if anybody doubts that this is going on, and you don't believe your eyes and the MRAPs that your police have, just go ahead and check that out.
Point St. Lucie just got one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man. There's a ton of MRAPs that are coming back, and they're being mothballed or reassigned or decommissioned, and the police departments are being able to pick them up at no cost.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, they just have to buy...
I want to just throw this out there to the cops and to all those body shops that are working on those things and grinding them up. Yeah. I know that the military says they, quote-unquote, scrub and clean those vehicles when they come back. I would go near them with a Geiger counter if I were you first before anything, just to make sure, because, depleted uranium has a way of sticking around, and, one little hot particle is all you need in your lungs to get lung cancer. So just saying, that dust inside the in the right corner there might not just only be regular dust. You might want to bring a Geiger counter or whatever you need to check for. I'm sure the DU would probably set off the Geiger counter. Just bring in a Geiger counter, and if the Geiger counter starts pinging because of your it starts going off, don't think it's just quote unquote background radiation. I would be quite concerned if you bring a Geiger counter inside one of these vehicles and it starts pinging, because trust me, I'm sure you're going to find some, without a shadow of a doubt.
You think?
Yeah,
I
know.
Perhaps
depleted uranium's not a problem, Joe. I know.
No. DU? Why? I eat that for breakfast. It actually makes your teeth whiter.
I've had Doug Rocky on multiple times talking about this.
That's a fantastic guest.
And poor Doug's not doing too well. Last time I talked to him, he was pretty sick,
people don't realize exactly what we did when we went over there, and the devastation that we caused with depleted uranium.
Dude, look at Fallujah.
Horrible. And now they say, well, now Al Qaeda's got Fallujah. Well,
let them have it.
Let them have it.
Don't worry, they're all going to be dead in 5 years from cancer.
Yeah, let them have it. No, it's of no threat. It's of no threat. Arnie Gunderson, yesterday I played a clip from him. He was like, well, I wouldn't eat the fish, but I'd go swimming in the Pacific Ocean. It's like...
Really, Arnie?
Dude, are you nuts? Well, maybe because he's old. He doesn't want to give it up. He's like, whatever, I'm old, I'm going to kick the bucket anyway.
I wanted to move to Washington State because I love the mountains up there. I wanted to move out into the middle of nowhere. Find some place that I could still have decent internet, but, live out in wherever. Even though, unfortunately, the state's become libtarded, and I don't buy into either side of that paradigm, that false paradigm. But they go in that false direction, I guess, if you will. And I would even deal with that, but I can't deal with glowing in the dark and not needing a nightlight to read, because my natural bioluminescence, which I wasn't born with. So yeah, I don't need Fukushima radiation. And I mean, last night I read that article from Michael Snyder, 36 reasons why the press, or 36 signs the press is lying to you or the media is lying to you about Fukushima and the radiation hitting the West Coast. Starfish melting. We don't know why that's happening. Really? You don't know why it's happening?
Why starfish are melting?
Yeah, all
yeah, actually, it's because of the atmospheric pressure shifting.
It's global warming.
Yes.
Man Bear Pig went swimming, and his global warming eye lasers melted them. And then they have polar bears in Alaska, their furs falling off. I mean, they're showing the animals, polar bears, seals, and stuff.
They're showing, they legalized marijuana.
Yeah, well, they're showing clear signs of radiation sickness. I mean, 60 years ago, school children could have diagnosed these animals with what's going on. It's so obvious okay, as to what these symptoms are. They're classic signs of radiation sickness.
Exactly. And you could say, okay, Geiger counter aside, all of these events are happening at different parts of the West Coast, whether it be up as far as Alaska, all the way down to San Diego, and even further south. So, I mean, it's not like you're talking about isolated incidents here. I mean, it is all up and down the coast. So one has to... This is one of those cases, I think, dude, where you believe what your eyes are seeing and what your ears are hearing.
I don't know, man. That stuff's creepy. And I'm not fear-mongering either, by the way. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but it's the truth. You have to at least know what's going on so you can prepare yourself and try to, I stopped eating anything that comes from the West Coast. Anything. A lot of the even fruit and veggies I buy used to come from, they come from the West Coast, and I've had to try to adapt and figure other options out. And even my wife, now, like, when we go to the store, sometimes you'll see stuff, even the organic stuff, you'll see, like, it just doesn't look right. And a lot of times it's, like, got some weird mutation or something on it, and she'll point out, she's like, that doesn't look normal. And I'm like, yeah. And, I mean, it's not just me. There's other people, like, if you listen when you're walking around the store, you'll hear other conversations. People talking about GMOs, people talking about Fukushima radiation. Like, it's getting out there more and more. Just because the mainstream media is going la 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 doesn't mean that people aren't paying attention. Because remember, the mainstream media isn't where most people get their media from and news from anymore, anyway.
Right.
No, people need to pay attention to the Fukushima.
Now it's all about what is it? Kathy Lee and Hoda on the Today Show.
Oh God.
That's what it's all about. That's what people go there, That's what they watch mainstream media for, is for that. Okay, then you got your cable news networks that
which no longer do news. MSNBC.
Yeah, they're veering away from it.
Well, they've admitted that they're out of the news business, and now CNN says that they're out of the news business. They're literally... Dude, their highest rated show is on the weekends, and it's Anthony Bourdain's show.
I know,
Chef.
It's a cook.
Yeah, on the weekends. CNN's highest rated show is a show about cooking and, Anthony Bourdain's whatever cook show, traveling the world, eating different food on CNN. Highest rated show. On a news network is nothing about news. So what is the guy, Zucker, the one that's running the network over there, what's his brainiac idea? Well, this goes to show you what we should do. So CNN has announced that they're not going to be in the news business anymore. Now, within the next year, you watch, their whole format is going to change up, and now they're talking about who's going to get fired, who's going to get, they're going to get rid of Piers Morgan. Well, good riddance to him. He's a loser. They should get him off the airwaves, okay? But why do you think Nancy Grace suddenly started talking about cannabis and saying how it's bad? She interjected herself into the conversation at the same time that all these cannabis clubs opened up. She didn't do it because she feels she's doing something morally right. She was trying to keep herself relevant because her parent company is trimming the fat. Okay.
They trimmed it because she's gone.
Well, see, she was trying to keep herself relevant. That's what she was doing. Because headline news, they want to get rid of headline news, the whole network. They're going to, or revamp it. Well, they said they were going to revamp it. Well, you know what that means.
What a shame. Oh, what a shame. I mean, the world would be a much worse place without headline news.
Well, because we're at a loss because the headline news network was where they did all the entertainment news. So, I mean, what are we going to do, Joe? Now I won't be able to see.
I think I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I know. Well, I didn't watch that crap anyway, but it just goes to show you. And Fox News has the highest rated out of all the cable news shows. And that's because the people that run Fox, whoever made a decision, were smart enough to figure out that even though that they slant things and they lie and stuff, and that their presenters suck too, just as much as the rest of them, they still at least cover relevant issues. Whether or not they take sides with it or they pick a side or not, they still cover relevant issues, where the other two, they don't even... I mean, Anderson Cooper...
the other two don't even have a personality that I can really resonate with, whereas Fox at least has Judge Napolitano and Lou Dobbs.
They had Napolitano. I don't know. Maybe they hired him back. I don't know.
Well, no, he still does.
From time to time, yeah, he goes on.
Yeah, he'll contribute. But he doesn't have a show.
Well,
but
I mean,
still.
MSNBC is just blatantly, like, they don't even report news. It's just opinionated propaganda.
It's garbage.
CNN's about the same way, but then they're also like reality TV, whatever, almost daytime talk show type crap. And then you have, well, Fox, and I don't watch any of them. I skim through their garbage to laugh at it and pick it apart. But anyway, we're out of time. Joe, thank you so much for coming on again, brother.
It was awesome being here, man. Anytime.
It's always an awesome broadcast with you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you tune in again next week. I'm going to air my interview with Charlotte. I got Vince Palomera, JFK expert, coming back on again. And tune in tomorrow night at 10 p.m. to Hangar 18, because I promise you it'll be just as rowdy as it normally is. Till then, see you all. Love you all. We're out.